Here's the outline and part 1 for your new story. Story outline. She slapped a rude millionaire, then discovered he was the Mafia boss. Part 1. The slap heard by everyone. Introduce Valentina Cruz, a curvy, hard-working waitress at an upscale restaurant. A rude, arrogant customer named Alessandro Moretti humiliates her in front of everyone, and she slaps him without thinking. The restaurant goes silent in shock. Ends with her boss telling her, in horror, exactly who she just slapped. Part 2. Fired and followed. Valentina is fired immediately, fearing serious consequences. That night, she notices a car following her home. Alessandro's men catch up to her, but instead of punishment, she is brought before him directly. Ends with Alessandro studying her carefully, deciding her fate. Part 3. An unexpected respect. Alessandro, intrigued rather than angered by her boldness, reveals he actually respects people who aren't afraid of him. He offers her a job at one of his legitimate businesses to make up for her lost income. Valentina is suspicious of his motives. Ends with her reluctantly accepting, only to discover strange things about his double life. Part 4. Two worlds colliding. Valentina settles into her new role, growing curious and increasingly drawn to Alessandro despite herself. Meanwhile, rivals who witnessed the restaurant incident spread word that Alessandro is losing his edge. Seeing this as an opportunity to challenge him, ends with a direct threat against Valentina to test Alessandro's reaction. Part 5. Testing his resolve. Alessandro must protect Valentina while proving to his rivals and his own organization that his authority remains absolute. Valentina, refusing to be merely a passive victim, actively helps navigate the danger herself. Ends with a dangerous confrontation forcing both of them into direct danger. Part 6. Bold enough to love. The threat is resolved through Alessandro's decisive action and Valentina's own courage. Alessandro publicly acknowledges his feelings for her, admiring the same boldness that once led her to slap him. Story ends with them building a relationship built on mutual respect, honesty, and fearless love. Part 1. The slap heard by everyone 1,000 words. The evening rush at Billionaire, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, was in full swing. Crystal glasses clinked softly against fine china. Soft jazz music played in the background, and well-dressed patrons enjoyed their expensive meals beneath warm, elegant lighting. Valentina Cruz moved gracefully between tables, balancing plates and taking orders with practiced efficiency despite the exhausting pace of her shift. Valentina was a curvy, hard-working young woman who had waited tables at Billionaire for nearly 2 years, saving carefully toward her dream of one day opening her own small bakery. She took genuine pride in her work, always polite and professional, even when dealing with the restaurant's occasionally demanding, wealthy clientele. That evening, however, she found herself serving a particularly difficult table. A group of businessmen sat near the window, celebrating loudly, their leader clearly the center of attention among his companions. Alessandro Moretti was strikingly handsome, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, his sharp features carrying an air of effortless confidence and quiet danger that most people in the room seemed instinctively to recognize, though few understood exactly why. Unbeknownst to Valentina, Alessandro was far more than a simple wealthy businessman enjoying a night out. He was one of the most powerful mafia bosses in the city, his legitimate restaurant investments carefully masking the true depth of his dangerous, complicated empire. As Valentina approached the table to take their order, Alessandro barely glanced up from his phone, his tone dismissive and arrogant. "Wine list. Now. And make sure it's not the cheap stuff you probably think passes for quality here." Valentina bit back her immediate irritation, maintaining her professional composure despite his obvious rudeness. "Of course, sir. Right away." She returned quickly with the wine list, only for Alessandro to wave it away impatiently without even looking at it. "Just bring your best bottle. I don't have time to read through pages of options chosen by someone who clearly doesn't understand real quality." His companions chuckled at his dismissive remark, clearly accustomed to his arrogant behavior. Valentina felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment and irritation, though she forced a polite smile, determined to maintain professionalism despite his insulting tone. "Certainly, sir," she replied evenly, turning to fetch his order. Throughout the evening, Alessandro continued his pattern of rude, dismissive behavior, criticizing the food unnecessarily, snapping his fingers impatiently to summon her attention, and making condescending comments about her efficiency in front of his amused companions. Valentina maintained her composure admirably, though her patience grew increasingly thin with each passing insult. Finally, near the end of their meal, Alessandro's rudeness reached its peak. As Valentina cleared their plates carefully, he suddenly grabbed her wrist roughly, his tone sharp and condescending. "This service has been unacceptable tonight," he said loudly, ensuring nearby tables could hear clearly. "Honestly, I don't know why places like this even bother hiring people who clearly don't understand basic hospitality." "Sir, please," Valentina said, attempting to remain calm despite the humiliating public scene he was creating. "I've done everything I can to accommodate your request tonight." "Clearly not well enough," Alessandro sneered, his grip tightening slightly around her wrist. "Maybe you should find work more suited to your limited abilities." Something inside Valentina snapped completely at his cruel, condescending remark. Months of quietly enduring difficult customers, years of working hard toward her dreams despite constant financial struggle, and now this arrogant man was publicly humiliating her without any regard for her feelings or dignity. Without thinking clearly, driven purely by overwhelming frustration and hurt pride, Valentina's free hand rose sharply, delivering a resounding slap directly across Alessandro's face. The entire restaurant fell instantly silent, every conversation stopping abruptly, every eye turning toward their table in shocked disbelief. Alessandro's companions stared, mouths open in stunned silence, clearly unable to process what had just happened. Alessandro himself sat frozen for a long, tense moment, his cheek reddening visibly from the impact, his expression unreadable beneath obvious shock and surprise. Slowly, dangerously, his eyes lifted to meet Valentina's, cold fury simmering beneath his controlled, calculating gaze. Valentina's own breath caught sharply, sudden realization and fear flooding through her as she registered exactly what she had just done. She hadn't meant to react so impulsively, yet the damage was already done, irreversible, in front of dozens of shocked witnesses. Her manager, Mr. Rossi, rushed over immediately, horror evident on his pale face as he grasped the severity of the situation. "Valentina," he hissed urgently, pulling her aside quickly, his hands trembling visibly. "Do you have any idea who that is?" "I don't care who he is," Valentina replied defensively, though her voice trembled slightly with growing anxiety. "He was incredibly rude, grabbing my wrist, insulting me in front of everyone." Mr. Rossi's face turned even paler, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. "That's Alessandro Moretti. Do you understand what that means? He's not simply a wealthy businessman, Valentina. He's the most powerful and dangerous man in this entire city." Valentina's heart dropped instantly, cold fear replacing her earlier righteous anger as she glanced back toward Alessandro, who remained seated calmly, his expression unreadable, his sharp eyes fixed intently upon her, clearly deciding something significant and dangerous regarding her sudden, unexpected act of defiance. Rossi's hands trembled as he gripped Valentina's arm, pulling her further away from the stunned table. "You need to apologize immediately," he whispered urgently. "Do whatever it takes to fix this, Valentina. Please." Valentina glanced back toward Alessandro, who remained seated, his cold, calculating eyes still fixed directly on her, his expression giving away nothing of his true thoughts. His companions whispered nervously among themselves, clearly waiting to see how their powerful friend would respond to such an unprecedented public humiliation. Taking a shaky breath, Valentina forced herself to approach the table again, though her earlier confidence had entirely evaporated, replaced now by genuine fear. "Mr. Moretti, I apologize for my behavior. It was unprofessional of me." Alessandro studied her silently for a long, tense moment, his sharp eyes narrowing slightly, though he said nothing in response. The silence stretched uncomfortably before he finally stood, straightening his jacket calmly, his expression still unreadable. "We're leaving," he said simply to his companions, his voice controlled despite the visible tension in his jaw. Without another word to Valentina, He walked out of the restaurant, his men following closely behind. The moment the door closed behind them, Mr. Rossi turned to Valentina, his expression a mixture of relief and lingering terror. "Valentina, I'm sorry, but I have no choice. I have to let you go. I can't risk the restaurant's relationship with someone like Alessandro Moretti." Valentina nodded numbly, understanding completely despite the crushing disappointment and fear settling deep in her chest. She gathered her things quietly, avoiding the curious, whispering glances from her co-workers as she left the restaurant that night, her mind racing anxiously with worry about what consequences might still await her. Walking home through the quiet city streets, Valentina couldn't shake the uneasy feeling of being watched. She glanced nervously over her shoulder several times, noticing a sleek black car trailing slowly behind her, matching her pace exactly. Panic rose sharply within her chest as she quickened her steps, her heart pounding anxiously. Suddenly, the car pulled up sharply beside her, and two large men stepped out quickly, blocking her path before she could react. "Miss Cruz," one of the men said calmly, though his tone carried clear authority. "Mr. Moretti would like a word with you." "I already apologized," Valentina said quickly, fear evident in her trembling voice. "Please, I don't want any trouble." "This isn't a request," the man replied firmly, though not unkindly. "Please come with us. Nothing will happen to you, I promise." Valentina hesitated, glancing around desperately for any means of escape, though she quickly realized resistance would likely prove pointless and possibly dangerous. Reluctantly, she nodded, allowing the men to guide her carefully into the waiting car. The drive was tense and silent, Valentina's nerves stretched thin with anxious uncertainty about what awaited her. Eventually, they arrived at an impressive, modern office building downtown, clearly one of Alessandro's legitimate business properties. She was escorted quickly inside, up a private elevator, finally arriving at a large, luxurious office suite on the top floor. Alessandro stood near the window, his back turned initially, gazing out over the city lights below. Valentina stood nervously near the door, unsure exactly what to expect from this dangerous, powerful man she had humiliated publicly just hours earlier. "Mr. Moretti," she began cautiously, "I truly am sorry for what happened tonight. I shouldn't have reacted that way, no matter how frustrated I was." Alessandro turned slowly, his expression calm now, though his sharp eyes studied her carefully, searching intently for something beneath her nervous, anxious exterior. "Sit down, Miss Cruz." Valentina obeyed cautiously, sitting stiffly in the chair across from his large desk, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. "Do you know how many people have ever dared to speak to me the way you did tonight?" Alessandro asked quietly, his tone unreadable. Valentina swallowed nervously. "I imagine not many, sir." "None," Alessandro replied simply. "Not one person in over a decade has ever dared to challenge me directly, let alone strike me physically in public." Valentina's heart pounded anxiously, uncertain whether his words carried genuine anger or something else entirely. "I understand if you're furious, sir. I'll accept whatever consequences you feel are necessary." Alessandro studied her closely, his expression shifting slightly, something unexpected flickering briefly behind his calculating gaze. "Actually, Miss Cruz, I find myself less angry than genuinely curious." "Curious," Valentina repeated, confusion evident in her voice. "Everyone around me," Alessandro explained slowly, "cowers, flatters, or fears me completely. Yet you, a simple waitress with clearly far less power or protection than anyone else in that restaurant tonight, still found the courage to stand up against my rudeness, regardless of the obvious risk." Valentina hesitated, uncertain how to respond to his unexpected admission. "I was just frustrated, sir. I didn't think about the consequences at the time." "Perhaps," Alessandro said thoughtfully, "but your boldness is rare, Miss Cruz, and rarity like that deserves attention rather than punishment." Valentina blinked in surprise, uncertain exactly what to make of his unexpected shift in demeanor. "What exactly are you saying, Mr. Moretti?" Alessandro's expression grew serious, though something warmer flickered briefly beneath his controlled exterior. "I'm saying, Miss Cruz, that instead of consequences, I'd like to offer you an opportunity, one that might benefit us both far more than punishment ever could. Valentina stared at him, uncertainty and cautious curiosity swirling together as she waited anxiously to hear exactly what Alessandro Moretti, the dangerous and powerful man she had unexpectedly slapped just hours earlier, intended to propose next. Alessandro walked slowly around his desk, leaning casually against its edge as he studied Valentina carefully. You lost your job tonight because of what happened at the restaurant. That wasn't entirely fair, considering my own behavior contributed significantly to the situation. Valentina blinked, surprised by his unexpected acknowledgement. You're admitting you were wrong? I'm admitting I was rude, arrogant, and unnecessarily harsh, Alessandro said simply. Traits I've grown accustomed to, given the world I operate in. But that doesn't excuse how I treated you tonight. Valentina studied him carefully, still uncertain about his true intentions despite his surprisingly honest admission. So, what exactly are you offering, Mr. Moretti? A position within one of my legitimate companies, Alessandro replied smoothly. Administrative work, reasonable hours, fair compensation, significantly better than what you were earning as a waitress. Consider it compensation for tonight's unfair termination. Valentina hesitated, suspicion creeping steadily into her thoughts. Why would you do that? You could have easily just let me go, forgotten about tonight completely. I could have, Alessandro admitted. But I find myself intrigued by your courage, Miss Cruz. It's rare, and rare things deserve proper recognition rather than dismissal. Valentina crossed her arms cautiously. And what happens if I say no? Then you say no, Alessandro replied simply. I'm not forcing anything upon you, but I genuinely encourage you to consider the opportunity carefully before deciding. Valentina studied him carefully, torn between practical necessity and lingering unease about becoming further entangled with someone so clearly dangerous and powerful. Yet the reality of her situation weighed heavily on her mind. She desperately needed steady income, especially now that her waitressing job was gone entirely. All right, she said finally, cautious reluctance evident in her voice. I'll accept the position, but I want to be clear, Mr. Moretti. I'm not interested in becoming entangled in whatever other business you might be involved with. Alessandro's lips curved into a faint, genuine smile, the first she had seen from him all evening. Understood completely, Miss Cruz. The position I'm offering remains entirely legitimate and separate from any other aspects of my life. Within days, Valentina began working at Moretti Enterprises, a legitimate real estate and investment firm serving as Alessandro's primary public business front. The office itself was professional, modern, and entirely unremarkable, giving no obvious indication of its owner's more dangerous, hidden world. Valentina settled quickly into her new administrative role, her natural organizational skills and diligent work ethic earning genuine respect among her new colleagues. Alessandro, though busy with his various responsibilities, made a point of checking in with her periodically, his initial arrogance replaced gradually by something more genuine and respectful. You're settling in well, Alessandro commented one afternoon, finding her organizing files methodically at her desk. The work is straightforward enough, Valentina replied, glancing up briefly. Your employees have been kind, helpful in showing me the ropes. Good, Alessandro said simply, though he lingered a moment longer than necessary, his expression thoughtful. And how are you adjusting otherwise, after everything that happened? Valentina considered his question carefully. Honestly, I'm still not entirely sure what to make of you, Mr. Moretti. One moment you're incredibly rude and arrogant, the next you're offering unexpected kindness and opportunity. Alessandro's expression grew more serious, genuine honesty replacing his usual controlled composure. My world requires a certain image, Miss Cruz, one built on strength, authority, and control. But that doesn't mean I'm incapable of recognizing genuine courage or extending genuine respect when it's rightfully earned. Valentina studied him carefully, gradually sensing something more complex and genuine beneath his controlled, dangerous exterior. I appreciate that, Mr. Moretti, truly. Though I imagine there aren't many people who see this side of you. Very few, Alessandro admitted quietly, which is precisely why I find myself unexpectedly comfortable revealing it to you." As weeks passed, Valentina found herself growing increasingly curious and drawn toward Alessandro. Despite her initial cautious hesitation, she began noticing small inconsistencies in his daily schedule, occasional tense phone calls he took privately, security measures around the office that seemed unusually excessive for a simple legitimate business. One afternoon, while delivering paperwork directly to Alessandro's private office, Valentina overheard a tense conversation through his partially closed door. "The Salerno family isn't backing down," an unfamiliar voice said urgently. "Word's already spreading that you let a waitress slap you in public without serious consequence. They're seeing this as weakness, an opportunity to challenge your authority directly." Valentina froze outside the door, her heart pounding anxiously as she absorbed this unexpected, alarming information. She hadn't considered that her impulsive slap might have serious, dangerous consequences beyond her own personal circumstances. "I'm aware of the perception," Alessandro replied calmly, though his tone carried clear, controlled tension. "But I won't allow rival families to dictate how I handle situations within my own domain." "Sir, with respect," the voice continued urgently, "if you don't respond decisively soon, they may test your authority further, possibly targeting the girl directly to provoke a reaction." Valentina's breath caught sharply, fear flooding through her as she quickly realized the serious danger her impulsive actions had unintentionally created. She quickly stepped back from the door, her mind racing anxiously, uncertain exactly how deeply she had unknowingly become entangled in Alessandro's dangerous, complicated world, a world now threatening to draw her directly into serious, unavoidable danger. Valentina returned quickly to her desk, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to process what she had just overheard. The rival family, the whispered threats against her safety, the growing perception that Alessandro had somehow weakened his authority because of her. None of it made sense to her simple, straightforward view of the world just weeks earlier. That evening, unable to shake her anxious thoughts, she decided to confront Alessandro directly, rather than remain silently uncertain about the danger potentially surrounding her. "Mr. Moretti," she said, knocking carefully on his open office door, "can I speak with you for a moment?" Alessandro looked up from his desk, his expression immediately softening at the sight of her. "Of course, Valentina. What's on your mind?" She hesitated only briefly before deciding honesty was her best approach. "I overheard part of your conversation earlier today, about the Salerno family, about them seeing you as weak because of what happened at the restaurant." Alessandro's expression tightened slightly, though he didn't seem entirely surprised by her admission. "I see. I apologize you had to learn about that so directly." "Is it true?" Valentina pressed. "Are they really targeting me because of what I did?" Alessandro sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair, a rare display of genuine frustration. "It's possible, yes. Rival families often look for any perceived weakness, any opportunity to challenge established authority. Unfortunately, my restrained reaction that night has been misinterpreted by some as uncertainty or weakness." Valentina felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. "So my actions really did put you in a difficult position." "Don't blame yourself," Alessandro said firmly, his tone genuine despite the seriousness of their conversation. "The perception is theirs, not yours. I chose not to react with anger or violence that night because I recognized something valuable in your courage, not weakness. But now I could be in danger because of it," Valentina said quietly, fear evident beneath her controlled voice. Alessandro's expression grew serious, protective determination clear in his eyes. "I won't allow that to happen, Valentina. I'll ensure your safety remains absolute, regardless of how rivals perceive my restraint." Valentina studied him carefully, noticing genuine concern reflected clearly in his usually controlled, guarded expression. "Why do you care so much about my safety, Alessandro? I'm just an employee, someone you barely knew until recently." Alessandro hesitated, clearly considering his words carefully before responding honestly. "Perhaps, initially, my concern was simply about maintaining my reputation and authority. But now, Valentina, my concern is genuinely about you, your safety, your well-being. Valentina's heart fluttered unexpectedly at his sincere admission, warmth spreading gently despite the underlying tension of their conversation. I appreciate that, Alessandro, truly. But I don't want to be a source of weakness or vulnerability for you either. You're not, Alessandro reassured her firmly. If anything, your boldness has reminded me of qualities I've long since buried beneath necessary control and authority. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by Marco, Alessandro's trusted assistant, rushing in urgently. Sir, we have a situation. Someone left a note at Valentina's apartment, threatening her directly. Valentina's breath caught sharply, fear flooding through her immediately. A threat? Already. Alessandro's expression darkened instantly, with controlled fury. What does it say? Marco hesitated, glancing nervously toward Valentina, before answering honestly. It says, tell your boss real bosses handle disrespect properly. Maybe we'll show him how it's done. Valentina felt her stomach twist anxiously, the reality of her dangerous situation becoming immediately, terrifyingly clear. They're really targeting me to get to you. Alessandro's jaw tightened, protective anger evident in his sharp, calculating eyes. This ends now. I won't allow the Salerno family to threaten you to prove a point against me. What do we do? Valentina asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her attempt to remain composed. You're not staying at your apartment tonight, Alessandro said firmly. I'll have my men move your things immediately. You'll stay somewhere secure until this threat is fully resolved. Valentina hesitated, torn between independent pride and genuine fear for her safety. Alessandro, I don't want to be someone who needs constant protection, someone helpless. Alessandro studied her carefully, clearly understanding her hesitation. You're not helpless, Valentina. You've proven that already, more than once. But right now, accepting protection isn't weakness. It's simply practical safety. Reluctantly, Valentina agreed, allowing Alessandro's men to quickly relocate her few belongings to a secure apartment within one of his private, heavily guarded properties. That evening, settling nervously into her new, unfamiliar surroundings, she found herself unexpectedly comforted by Alessandro's genuine concern and protective determination. Meanwhile, word of the Salerno family's direct threat against Valentina spread quickly through both organizations, further escalating tensions between rival powers. Alessandro's own men grew increasingly anxious, understanding clearly that a direct, decisive response was rapidly becoming unavoidable if Alessandro intended to maintain his authority and protect Valentina completely. That night, unable to sleep from anxious uncertainty, Valentina found herself standing quietly on her apartment's balcony, staring out over the city lights, her mind racing with fear and unexpected concern for Alessandro's own safety amid the escalating danger. She had no idea, standing there anxiously in the quiet night, that Alessandro was already devising a decisive, dangerous plan to confront the Salerno family directly, a confrontation that would soon test both his authority and his growing, genuine feelings toward her in ways neither of them had anticipated. The next morning, Alessandro called an urgent meeting with his most trusted men, including Marco and several senior members of his organization. The tension in the room was palpable as they gathered around his private conference table. The Salerno family has crossed a line, Alessandro said firmly, his voice carrying controlled authority. Threatening an innocent woman to send a message about my supposed weakness ends now. Sir, one of his senior men, Giovanni, spoke cautiously. A direct confrontation with the Salernos could escalate into full conflict. Are you certain this is the right approach? I've considered every alternative, Alessandro replied firmly. But allowing this threat to continue unanswered would confirm exactly what they already suspect, that I've grown weak, uncertain in my authority. That perception is far more dangerous than any confrontation. Marco nodded in agreement. We've identified their base of operations. A confrontation could be arranged discreetly, minimizing unnecessary casualties while sending a clear, decisive message. Arrange it, Alessandro ordered. Today. Meanwhile, Valentina, restless and anxious within her secure apartment, decided she couldn't simply remain passive while danger swirled around her because of her own impulsive actions. She called Alessandro directly, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "Alessandro, I want to help," she said firmly, once he answered. "I can't just sit here safely while you risk everything because of what I did." "Valentina, this isn't your responsibility," Alessandro replied gently, though clear surprise colored his tone. "I don't want you anywhere near this danger. I'm already involved, whether either of us wants that or not," Valentina argued firmly. "If there's anything I can do to help resolve this safely, I want to be part of it." Alessandro hesitated, clearly weighing her determined request carefully. "There might be something," he admitted finally. "The Salerno family underestimates you, sees you simply as leverage, a helpless pawn. That perception could actually work to our advantage." "What do you need me to do?" Valentina asked, steadying her nerves despite the obvious danger involved. "I need you to remain visible briefly, appearing vulnerable and unprotected, drawing their men into a location where we can address this decisively and safely," Alessandro explained carefully. "But only if you're genuinely comfortable with the risk involved." Valentina took a deep breath, determination steadying her resolve. "I'm comfortable. Let's end this properly." That afternoon, following Alessandro's careful plan, Valentina appeared briefly at a public cafe, seemingly alone and vulnerable, while Alessandro's men discreetly positioned themselves nearby, ready to intervene the moment Salerno's men made their expected move. As anticipated, 2 men from the Salerno organization approached Valentina quickly, confident in their perceived advantage. "Miss Cruz," one said coldly, "your boss needs to learn a lesson about respect." Before they could act further, Alessandro's men swiftly intervened, quickly overpowering and detaining the surprised attackers. Alessandro himself arrived personally moments later, his expression cold and authoritative as he confronted the captured men directly. "Tell your associates," Alessandro said firmly, his voice carrying unmistakable authority, "that threatening innocent people connected to me will always result in serious, immediate consequences. My restraint before was a choice, not weakness. Test me again, and you'll discover exactly how decisive I can be." The captured men, clearly intimidated by Alessandro's controlled yet unmistakably dangerous demeanor, nodded fearfully, quickly relaying the message back to their organization once released. Word spread rapidly throughout the city's criminal underworld. Alessandro's decisive, controlled response effectively ending any further perception of weakness or vulnerability. Later that evening, Alessandro found Valentina at his private estate, relief evident on both their faces after the tense confrontation. "You did wonderfully today," Alessandro said sincerely, "though I hated putting you at risk, even briefly." "I wanted to help," Valentina replied honestly. "I couldn't just stand by, doing nothing, while you handled the consequences of my own actions." Alessandro studied her carefully, genuine admiration evident in his gaze. "Your courage continues to surprise me, Valentina. Not many people would willingly risk themselves for someone else's benefit, especially in a situation this dangerous." Valentina smiled softly, exhaustion and relief evident in her expression. "Perhaps I'm not as helpless or fragile as you initially assumed, Mr. Moretti." "I never truly believed you were," Alessandro admitted quietly, stepping closer. "In fact, your boldness and courage are exactly what drew me to you from the very beginning, long before tonight's events." Valentina's breath caught softly at his sincere admission, warmth spreading unexpectedly through her chest despite the tension of the day's events. "Alessandro, what exactly are you saying?" Alessandro reached gently for her hand, his usually composed exterior completely melting away, replaced entirely by genuine warmth and vulnerability. "I'm saying, Valentina, that my feelings toward you have grown far beyond simple respect or admiration. I find myself caring deeply for you, more than I ever anticipated or intended." Valentina looked up at him, surprised yet genuinely moved by his heartfelt admission. "I think," she said softly, "I've felt something similar growing between us as well, despite my initial hesitation and fear." As they stood together quietly, the tension and danger of recent weeks finally beginning to fade, both Alessandro and Valentina recognized clearly that their unexpected journey, born from a single impulsive slap, had led them unexpectedly towards something genuine, meaningful, and worth protecting completely, regardless of the danger still potentially lingering ahead. In the days following the confrontation with the Salerno family, an uneasy peace settled over the city's criminal underworld. Word of Alessandro's decisive, controlled response had traveled quickly, effectively silencing any further doubts about his authority or resolve. Yet Alessandro remained cautious, aware that lingering resentment within the Salerno organization could still pose future complications. "They've backed down for now," Marco reported during a private meeting at Alessandro's estate. "But Salerno himself hasn't spoken publicly since the incident. It's possible he's simply regrouping before considering another approach." "Keep watch," Alessandro instructed firmly. "I won't underestimate them again." Meanwhile, Valentina had settled comfortably into her new position at Moretti Enterprises, her earlier anxiety about the dangerous world surrounding Alessandro gradually giving way to cautious acceptance and growing trust. Her colleagues had grown genuinely fond of her diligent, warm personality, and Alessandro found himself increasingly drawn to her steady presence in his daily life. One evening, as Valentina prepared to leave the office, Alessandro appeared unexpectedly at her desk, his expression thoughtful. "Do you have plans this evening?" he asked. "Nothing significant," Valentina replied, curiosity evident in her voice. "Why do you ask?" "I'd like you to accompany me to a business gathering tonight," Alessandro said carefully. "It's important, and I genuinely value your presence there." Valentina hesitated slightly, sensing the significance behind his simple request. "Alessandro, is this a business event, or something more personal?" Alessandro's lips curved into a soft, genuine smile. "Perhaps a bit of both. Will you join me?" Valentina nodded, curiosity and cautious excitement building steadily within her. That evening, she dressed carefully, arriving at an elegant private event hosted by several prominent business associates, many of whom she recognized instantly as influential figures within the city's underground circles. As they entered together, Alessandro confidently guided her through the crowded room, introducing her openly and warmly to his associates, his demeanor entirely different from his usual guarded, controlled public persona. Whispers spread quickly through the gathering, curious eyes following their every movement. Eventually, Alessandro guided her toward a small stage, set discreetly at the room's center, gently taking her hand as he addressed the assembled crowd directly. "I'd like to take a moment," Alessandro announced clearly, his voice carrying quiet confidence, "to introduce someone important to me. Someone whose courage and honesty have profoundly changed my perspective in recent weeks." The room fell silent, curious anticipation evident on every face as Alessandro continued, his gaze softening warmly as he looked directly at Valentina. "Many of you have heard rumors about an incident weeks ago, involving a slap delivered boldly and honestly by this remarkable woman, Valentina Cruz." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd, curious glances shifting between Alessandro and Valentina, uncertain exactly where his words were leading. Rather than punishing her boldness, Alessandro continued sincerely, "I found myself genuinely respecting it, drawn to a woman unafraid to challenge authority, unafraid to stand firmly by her own principles, regardless of danger or consequence." Valentina felt warmth rising steadily in her cheeks, surprised yet deeply moved by his public, heartfelt declaration. "Tonight," Alessandro continued, his voice steady and sincere, "I want everyone here to understand clearly that Valentina isn't simply an employee or someone connected briefly to an amusing incident. She's someone I deeply respect, admire, and yes, love." Gasps and murmurs spread quickly through the crowd, genuine surprise evident at Alessandro's unprecedented public admission. Valentina's heart raced with a mixture of emotions, surprise, happiness, and genuine love reflected clearly in her own tear-filled eyes as she gazed back at him. "Alessandro," she whispered softly, overwhelmed by his sincere, public declaration. Alessandro smiled gently, reaching to wipe a single tear from her cheek. "I mean every word, Valentina. Your boldness, your honesty, and your courage have shown me exactly the kind of partner I need by my side, someone unafraid to challenge me, to keep me honest, and to remind me daily what genuinely matters. Valentina smiled warmly through her happy tears, genuine love and admiration evident clearly in her expression. I love you too, Alessandro. Despite everything, despite the danger and uncertainty, I've grown to care for you deeply, more than I ever imagined possible. The crowd, initially stunned into silence, gradually broke into warm applause, genuine respect and admiration replacing their earlier shocked curiosity. Alessandro gently pulled Valentina close, sealing his heartfelt declaration with a warm, tender kiss, the assembled crowd's applause growing louder in genuine celebration of their unexpected, beautiful connection. In the months that followed, Alessandro and Valentina's relationship deepened steadily, built firmly upon mutual respect, genuine trust, and unwavering honesty. Valentina continued thriving in her role at Moretti Enterprises, her boldness and integrity earning genuine admiration throughout Alessandro's organization. The Salerno family, recognizing clearly Alessandro's unwavering authority and resolve, chose ultimately to maintain peaceful boundaries, wary of further provoking his decisive strength. One quiet evening, sitting comfortably together on the balcony of Alessandro's estate, watching the sunset paint the sky in warm, gentle hues, Valentina rested her head contentedly against his shoulder. "Do you ever regret that night at the restaurant?" she asked softly, glancing up at him curiously. "The night I slapped you in front of everyone." Alessandro chuckled warmly, pulling her closer. "Not for a single moment. That slap, as unexpected and startling as it was, led me directly to you, Valentina. It taught me the true value of boldness, honesty, and genuine courage, qualities I now cherish deeply in my life." Valentina smiled softly, genuine happiness and security settling comfortably around her heart. "I'm glad it happened too, despite everything that followed. I'm grateful it led me here to you." Alessandro gently kissed the top of her head, holding her closely as the peaceful evening settled around them. "And I intend to spend the rest of my life proving exactly how grateful I am for your boldness, Valentina, every single day." From that day forward, Alessandro Moretti was no longer known simply as a powerful and dangerous mafia boss, but privately, quietly, as a man who had finally discovered genuine happiness, security, and love, all because a courageous, curvy waitress had once dared to slap him boldly, honestly, without fear or hesitation.